members meeting, of course, of Nssf. It happens to be the 6th annual members meeting, and in this meeting, a lot is actually disseminated to the members, and there is a summary of how things have actually been running. In the previous years, there has been a lot of investment that Nssf has actually made tremendously with other members from all walks of life. Nssf has actually given back. We all remember the show that was actually called Benefits with Nssf, and they were trying to see how best people can actually use their benefits when they are retired, and how best this money can actually be used to add value to the economy, and not only to the economy but even to the individuals from family level. So we're going to have a couple of interaction with a couple of members here, but once the best person who could actually have would be Richard Biarugaba, who happens to be the managing director of Nssf. But a summary from the previous year, there seems to be an increase. There seems to be an increase, of course, in the benefits with regards to the money. Monies have actually been piling up. Literally, the annual members meeting is to give them an update of what actually happens, what they should expect with regards to their investments. We're still live, of course, at the Pearl of African Hotel. And then I understand that the client's compliance actually rose from 81% to 87%. That means more companies are actually paying benefits of their workers, of their employees. There was a decline, of course, in a couple of other figures, but one thing stands out for sure is that Nssf still holds a strong ground with regards to making usage of the benefits of the members. I'm getting the MD of course, Nssf, Mr. Richard Biarugaba, will be joining us to have a conversation about the Nssf, the annual meeting, and what it means, and what we should expect, of course, in the subsequent conversation. Good morning, Mr. Biarugaba.
Yes. Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Pretty good.
It's a good morning for you, and I can see you're overly excited.
I'm actually brilliant. Feel good, and I hope all the members of Nssf will feel the way I do by the end of the day. Because today we are making the important announcement. We've been investing. We've worked out the numbers, and we are ready to announce how much we're going to reward them for keeping their money with us this year, and hopefully they'll have a smile on their face like I do.
Okay. Mr. Biarugaba, let's go fast forward. What is the annual general meeting about to the viewers they are watching? Actually, maybe they have been serving, but they don't know what this entire symposium is about.
Well, 6 years ago, we felt that as part of our transparency agenda, we needed to tell our members how we'd been performing. Don't forget that actually our members are shareholders. They are shareholders in Nssf, and this is our time of accounting to them. Basically tell them this is how much you gave us during the year, this is how much we collected, and this is where we invested it, and this is how much magoba we made, and this profit is what we are sharing with you as our members, so that your money does not lose its value. Because really the reason why anybody puts their money with a pension scheme is to make sure that in future, when their earning is no longer there, that they are able to draw on the savings, and those savings have not been affected by the rate of inflation. So our target is always to give our members a return that is higher than inflation, and hopefully that's what we're going to do today.
And yes, that's a clear picture there. But Mr. Biarugaba, why set up such a fund? Why set up such a meeting? Like, was there some pressure? Were members actually questioning a couple of things?
No, they weren't. If you look at the law actually said that we needed to have a meeting. It's only that the past administrations before my time were not doing it. I don't know why, but obviously they were not doing it. But we felt that we needed to introduce this particular step in our transparency agenda to make sure that our members every year we account to them what we've done in the year, and what our plans are for the future to continue to provide them with a good return and a good benefit for when they retire.
So what should we expect today in today's meeting? It seems to be in an overdrive. People are excited about it. I've seen a couple of them walking with them like, what's happening? Like, oh, we're getting figures today.
Well, what should they expect? They should expect good news. I think for a long time, Nssf had an issue with projects. Today, we're going to tell them that many of the projects have been begun. We're going to tell them that a lot of the projects which were losing us money, we've been able to turn them around and make a little bit of money. So we are hopeful that there will be a lot of good news today. And we're also going to tell them what we will do with the future, because the future is obviously important, because as you all know, there is a new law that is going to come into place, which will affect us. Our Act, the law that governs us, is going through a process of amendment through Cabinet and in Parliament, and we are hoping that the results of that will be that our members will have more opportunities, will have better products, and will have a better life saving with us.
Thank you for the benefits with Nssf. I saw a couple of people. I was supporting the gentleman who came from Fort Potro.
Yes.
It was a good initiative.
Yes.
But I would love to know, where does the fund invest money besides that?
Well, we invest a lot of our money actually in financial instruments called fixed income investments. These financial instruments are basically instruments that give you a fixed return. Okay. So I'll be telling the public that we invested about 75% of our money in those, and we invested in Uganda, Kenya, and in Tanzania, and in Rwanda. I'll also be telling our members that we also invested in equities. We basically had money in companies, both private and on the stock exchange, and I'll be sharing how the stock exchanges have performed this year. And then finally, I'll be updating on the real estate projects, the Nsimbes of this world, the Temangalos of this world, the Mbuya of this world, the Lobo of this world. I'll be telling them how far we've gone.
Well, could you give us a highlight of this year's performance generally?
Well, we have 3 milestones that we've beaten. The first milestone is that we have exceeded 1 trillion shillings in collections. It has never happened in the fund. The second one is that we've exceeded 1.6 trillion in revenues. I believe that is the highest of any company in Uganda in terms of turnover. And then the third one perhaps is on the return, but I'm not privileged to talk about that. So let's wait and see what happens. But there will be a couple of records that we're breaking today, and we are very hopeful that our members will be very happy.
Let's talk about the compliance. The compliance level seems to have actually gone higher as compared to the previous years. What do you think would have triggered this?
Well, actually, we are seeing a lot of growth in the financial sector, a lot of growth in the health sector, and a lot of growth in the education sector. There seem to be a lot of businesses that are coming up there and hiring more people, and we're quite pleased that is coming up. Our compliance levels now have hit 81% for 3 months. That means that for every 100 employers that we have, 81 of them are complying with us within the last 3 months, which is a very good thing. That has been largely driven by our very successful relationship management model, but we also still do a little bit of compliance. In other words, we use the law in order to follow up our employers. So you will notice that we raised almost 6 billion shillings in arrears from companies that had faltered on paying their Nssf and are now complying, which is a good thing.
And with regards to private sector, has private sector actually been very positive? These new startups, have they registered and they comply?
Yes, we've actually seen an upsurge in registrations. 14% of our growth this year is largely from new businesses. We've also seen about 42% of our growth coming from salary increments, and then we've also seen bonuses play a big part. Another maybe 40% of salary increments have been due to bonuses, and also due to the fact that people are getting higher salaries, and also new companies that are coming in. But the biggest growth in new registrations has been in voluntary contributions, where we've been able to collect over 7 billion shillings in collections, mostly from mobile money. Mobile money is a big thing for us, and we think that a lot of our members, especially those in the voluntary section, are beginning to embrace technology in order to comply with the requirements of Nssf.
Wow. Thank you so much, Mr. Vega. I wish you, it's going to be a very long day for you, but thank you so much for your time. Well, there you have it. It's going to be a very long day. If you are one of those who serve with Nssf, well, it so happens that you've been quite very compliant. It seems to be a lot more is actually going to be exposed. More figures. I understand real estate is actually doing good. Shares and stock exchange equally are doing great. And not only that, we still have a lot of companies that are being registered and people getting more bigger salaries. So Biargaba says that this is actually attributed to the big numbers of companies that are now compliant. They're paying, and not only that, they're actually making sure that people are registering for that. So that is entirely a bigger picture. He says that the highlights of last year is there's been a lot more investment that has actually come through with regards to health sector. We have hospitality. We have many equally from the government entities. So a couple of business owners have actually come up to empower the fund, and is saying this is actually being done to see to it that people can make good usage of their funds. So a lot more is actually coming through from, of course, the annual members meeting at the Nssf here. The conversation will, of course, be online. You can follow Nssf or you follow NTV. Will be actually streaming live this very conversation as we're waiting to see how big. He actually mentioned one thing that took my attention, that they went beyond what they expected this year. They actually go beyond $1 trillion they expected, and they had 3 billion with regards to an upsurge of figures and benefits that are coming through. So today is one of those days when we have these bigger benefits coming through. As a Ugandan who is actually paying Nssf, it is part of your it's part of your due diligence, if I should say, to actually follow this conversation, that you learn from it, you get to know what your money is doing, how it's being invested, and what are your returns like, and how best can you access them. This is something you should tap into. That is the conversation we're having today. And of course, we are still here at Pearl of Africa Hotel. Many of them are actually coming through to understand. I've seen a couple of stakeholders, people from Ministry of Finance, people from private enterprises. We're having many directors have actually seen them, and all they coming in the same wave, in the same code. They need to know how the money is being invested, and NTV is bringing you a 360 coverage of this entire conversation. And we're having directors coming through here. Director, nice to meet you.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Yes.
Today seems to be, everyone seems to be in a merry mood.
Oh, great day for the workers and our members. Yeah, very good day.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Director, let me take you fast forward.
Yes.
What do you make of this annual meeting for the 6th time it's actually here?
Okay, let me start first by introducing myself, because I need our members to really know who is really talking. I'm by the names of Peter Andrew Stewart. I'm a board of director with Nssf. I chair the finance committee, and I'm very happy that this year, financial year 2017-18, has been great, as earlier alluded on by our managing director. Figures have been great. I don't want to divulge the news, but I'll leave that to the minister. When figures are good, we'll all be smiling.
We'll all be smiling.
Yes.
Let's talk about, I saw the summary. It actually states that there's been the response has been positive to the companies and the different investors. What do you make of this change in attitude?
I think the fund came from very far. From years of bad publicity, people lost confidence in who was taking charge of their money. We have decided as a board, since we came in, we've decided to restore confidence. One of the first things we wanted to do was to have, making sure that we have positive tonality both outside and within the organization, make sure that the organization is stable. I think when we sat down to work, we worked as a team, and the figures have been increasing year on year on. And one of the principles, one of the promises we made to our members is every year we'll give them an average 10-year inflation plus 2% that will be added on top. And we have also agreed that when we perform good, the members must be able to receive it. When we perform bad, we share the bad news with them. This year, fantastic.
It has been fantastic.
Yeah, I
understand. We are looking at 81%. That is what the MD said. Yeah. And what does this mean to a layman Ugandan actually who serves with Nssf?
81% means from a reserve of about, okay, we didn't say reserve 100%, that's the total reserve. Yes. We are giving out about 81%. Just look at that. And keeping just that little for the times where we shall be having problems. Yeah, business is always like that. Yes. So we need to keep some reserve, because that reserve should be able to keep us within two-digit figures for the next year. We don't want to fall down into one-digit interest to our members. So we believe the balance is in the reserve should be able to cushion. Should we fail to perform well, we will still be able to give our members a double-digit. And our promise, as I told you, average 10-year inflation plus 2%. That's our promise.
Well, won't inflation affect it in any way?
No, it is covered, because I told you what we do is we go for an average over 10 years. Yeah. Then we also add them 2%. So inflation catered for you. There's nobody.
Well, you're dealing in finance, and you had your director, you're in a big board there. Yeah. Let's look at what the fund invests in. A Ugandan would actually be interested to know, what is my money being invested in?
Okay, mostly we invest in about 3 categories. We have real estates. We don't do much on real estate, but because you can look at the market itself. Normally, if you look at the city, people normally occupy the lower floor and leave the upper ones. Yeah. Real estate is not yet very big, but still we really promise our members decent accommodation. We do off-taker projects, and we have land whereby we would like to build housing facilities for our members in case they retire. Yeah, in Singbete, Mangalo, all that. We do a lot and earn a lot from equities. Equities we do very well, and fixed income. So that is where normally we invest. Mostly with equities, we have most of the companies, investing companies that we deal with. So most of our money is from equities and then fixed income.
Yeah. Of late, now that you're in finance, people are finding it easier to get their benefits. The process is not as tedious as it used to be. What do you make of this feedback when it comes to you as someone actually who is engaged with finances and making sure that this flows well?
Yeah, what you're saying is really very correct. In the past, it would take almost 4 months, 5 months to process.
Even a year.
I'm telling you now, from the records that we have at the close of the year, I think we've done 7 days. Our target, we have a 10-year strategic plan to make sure that before 10 years or by 10 years, we are able to process your benefits within 1 day.
Wow.
Because we give you a message and say, Paul, happy birthday. This is your 55th birthday. Please come by your nearest Nssf office and pick your benefits. Yeah, as simple as that. We want to put it to 1. We've moved from very far, very many months, into currently we're about 7 days.
7 days.
Yeah, 7 days to process. Yeah, that will include even the hard days. So what the one that is disturbing us currently is the issue of survivor benefit. Now we are using NIRA, because that's what the law tells us. But it was very difficult to always verify, because you have to drive, whether it is in Arua, you have to drive and make sure that you really confirm that it's the grave. It was really tedious, but NIRA has made it a bit easier for us. We believe by entrusting into their records and getting into their records, we could be able to reduce this further.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Director.
Thank you so much,
It's going to be a good day.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the day.
Absolutely. Well, there you have it. The figures actually flying from left, right, and center. Well, that will take us for a short breather, but we'll be back. We're still, of course, at Pearl of Africa Hotel. We're at the annual members, of course, a meeting where Nssf is going to divulge a couple of figures on what they've invested in, what are the returns, and things of the sort. For now, let's take a breather, and I'll be back shortly with more from Pearl of African Hotel.
Guide is brought to you by IUEA, the best university in Uganda. Have you been searching for a university that has an affordable fee structure and University of East Africa avails this to all students without discrimination or favor. At IUEA, we aim at creating value in education, guaranteeing employability, and our desire is to ensure that quality education is embedded in every topic taught in the lecture room, which will position your child as a premier candidate for employment, affordable fees, and world-class education without a compromise. IUEA Guide is brought to you by
IUEA, the best university in Uganda.
Artemis is a secret hospital for criminals.
This place was built on trust and rules.
If you knew what she could do to you with just that cup of coffee.
You're lucky this place has rules.
Visiting hours are never. Hotel Artemis.
You might want to buy some scented candles. It smells like somebody died in here.
They did.
On the next episode is brought to you by
Kiri Soda.
Let's celebrate life.
On the next episode,
You had no right to go through my things.
But I did, and it's done.
Fine, so aside from knowing my identity, now you know where you first met me.
Yes, on Garza Blanca. And you knew all along who I was, right? Your one night stand.
It wasn't like that, Marcella. And you shouldn't have gone through my things.
Nothing in this life is definite. Who knows? Maybe something will happen. I don't know.
Oh, my friend. The only thing that can happen is that the bank will take the rent.
Soda in 4 different flavors: lemon, mixed berry, orange, and Kiri Cola. Celebrate life with Kiri Soda.
Let's celebrate life.
IUEA Guide is brought to you by
IUEA, the best university in Uganda.
Have you been searching for a university that has an affordable fee structure and doesn't compromise with the quality of education offered? International University of East Africa avails this to all students without discrimination or favor. At IUEA, we aim at creating value in education, guaranteeing employability, and our desire is to ensure that quality education is embedded in every topic taught in the lecture room, which will position your child as a premier candidate for employment, affordable fees, and world-class education without a compromise. IUEA Guide is brought to you by
IUEA, the best university in Uganda.
There are so many things you need to win a tender in this town, from knowing the right people, experience, tax clearance, expertise, trade license, registration, and so much more. But above all, you need to know about the tender to bid and win it. That's why you need the Daily Monitor. Read tenders every Tuesday in the Daily Monitor for government bids and tenders, private sector projects to NGO contracts. Don't miss tenders every Tuesday. Daily Monitor. Tenders every Tuesday. Truth every day.
You don't really think it's gonna be this easy, do you, boy? Get him! Whoa!
With this regenerator, we shall turn every planet in galaxy!
While you plan your retirement, ask yourself, are your savings guaranteed to offer you a better life? Well, join us at this year's Nssf annual members meeting on the 28th of August 2018 at the Pearl of Africa Hotel starting at 8 a.m. and find out how your savings will guarantee a better life for you and your family. The meeting is open to all members. All you have to do is book your seat today.
Nssf, a better life. Live on NTV.
That's a 10 out of 10. Thank you. This also, that's a 10. Should we see this one now? Sure. This girl, just one. It is clean, but not perfect. Better than my cleaners? Impossible. Challenge. Try the new Harpic 10X.
Compared to ordinary cleaners, Harpic stick formulation removes yellow stains 10 times better, giving you a sparkling clean toilet.
Wow. Now you also take the Harpic 10X challenge.
State-of-the-art technology in live broadcasting, we provide you, our clients, seamless and HD quality coverage anytime, anywhere.
I want to thank the organizers who have done great work.
Wherever you are, we will be there. For more information, contact our sales department on 256 414 563-400 or email salesteam@ntv.co.ug.
This is NTV. On the next episode is brought to you by
Kiri Soda.
Let's celebrate life!
Should we wait to plan for succession only with the light of death?
Succession means that you have deliberately planned there is going to be a hereafter after somebody, and that may not augur well in a family setup.
One of the quickest ways you can plan for succession is engage and engage and engage your children.
You find that in the military, you keep on being trained and deployed and you prove yourself. So you find that succession in the military, in most countries, even in chaotic Africa, in the military, it's not chaotic.
Soda in 4 different flavors: lemon, mixed berry, orange, and Kiri Cola. Celebrate life with Kiri Soda.
Let's celebrate life!
While you plan your retirement, ask yourself, are your savings guaranteed to offer you a better life? Well, join us at this year's Nssf annual members meeting on the 28th of August 2018 at the Pearl of Africa Hotel starting at 8 a.m. and find out how your savings will guarantee a better life for you and your family. The meeting is open to all members. All you have to do is book your seat today.
Nssf, a better life.
Live on NTV.
You don't have to look any further. Get online and you'll get any property. It's all about joiner. How best do you give a tree a very good second life?
Because there's a lot of development happening around.
So for example, carpets, pick luxurious carpet and you say, I gotta have a carpet wall in my house. But we're a hot country.
Welcome to the property show where we make real estate sense.
From Uganda's political and economic capital to your district.
There are very many youth today who are unemployed.
The veterinary doctors who are trained are being replaced by soldiers.
From Karamoja to Soro, from Bududa to Gulu, we are on the way to your district.
We all can do something if we are united to end sexual and gender-based violence.
The police should have one face.
When you look at the security organs that are trying to help the district, these are the organs who are really helping the rich people.
We don't just give people a platform, but we offer alternative policies with a hope that policymakers will listen.
I don't know what is happening right now in the country.
We have about 140
cases of defilement. You hear 145 cases of defilement. Just right from which month? There are those who are dying while they are giving birth.
1 out of every 10 girls drop out because of failure to manage menstruation.
And in many of our debates, we have also reconciled political leaders. Your opinion counts every Saturday at 8 p.m. As usual, I aspire to inspire you before I expire. I am Agnes Nandutu, the Speaker of People's Parliament.
Join Agnes Nandutu, the Speaker of People's Parliament, every Saturday at 8 p.m. only on NTV.
While you plan your retirement, ask yourself, are your savings guaranteed to offer you a better life? Well, join us at this year's Nssf annual members meeting on the 28th of August 2018 at the Pearl of Africa Hotel starting at 8 a.m. and find out how your savings will guarantee a better life for you and your family. The meeting is open to all members. All you have to do is book your seat today.
Nssf, a better life.
Live on NTV.
Our intro, we'll do our hand clap, and then we'll do the national anthem immediately after that. We're ready to go. Fenon, NTV, NBS, UBC, standing by for you.
To meet your deadlines in the office or in your business, ask yourself, are your savings guaranteed to offer you a better life? While you take a break and spend the weekend with your family, ask yourself, are your savings guaranteed to offer you a better life? While you plan your retirement, ask yourself, are your savings guaranteed to offer you a better life? Well, join us at this year's Nssf annual members meeting on the 28th of August 2018 at the Pearl of Africa Hotel starting at 8 a.m. and find out how your savings will guarantee a better life for you and your family. The meeting is open to all members. All you have to do is book your seat today by registering online at www.nssfug.org. You can also follow the meeting live on NTV, NBS, UBC, Facebook and Twitter. For more information, call our toll-free line on 0800-286-773.
Nssf, a better life.
Good morning and welcome to the 6th annual Nssf annual members meeting, coming to you live from the Pearl of Africa Hotel here in Kampala. As we start, we'll begin with the national anthem. You may be seated, ladies and gentlemen. A very good morning to you, to our viewers joining us now on NTV, NBS, and UBC, as well as on Facebook Live and on Twitter and on social media. Welcome to the 6th annual Nssf Annual Members Meeting 2018. My name is Ben Mwine. I am Nssf member number 40247. Yes, I know my number. Do you know yours? I'm looking at my balance right now on the Nssf Go app, and I'm proud to tell you I'm a very rich man. Or at least I think I am, based on what I know from the figures. The Nssf is a multi-trillion fund mandated by the government through the Nssf Act to ensure that we have social security for employees in the private sector. As a result of that, the mandate is very simple. Be profitable, trustworthy, efficient, secure, and use innovation to make sure that we guarantee safety, security, but above all, a competitive return on interest for members' savings. In the spirit and commitment of transparency and accountability, the Nssf has for the last 6 years been holding the annual members meeting, where we get to find out how much money our money has made. Or to be fair, how much money the fund has made for us. And today is a very big day as we get to find out what the new interest rate is going to be on your savings. Don't forget that now, even if you're not fully employed as a private citizen, as long as you've been a member of Nssf before, you can now voluntarily save with Nssf and enjoy the benefits that come with it. Now, of course, in Uganda being a very young population, you might be thinking, we must prepare for our future. As we retire, you must be ready for what happens on the other end as we grow older. And Nssf is here to guarantee that you have a better life. And no matter how much money you end up with, when you eventually pull it out, it can do some amazing things, no matter how little it might seem to you. I'd like us to start by taking a look at a very inspirational story of someone who got just a little bit of money, or so it would seem, but did some amazing things with it.
I had work from Uganda Industry Research Institute, where I started working 2006. I was given 3 years contract. Nkanye niteekateeka ky'okukola ishomero shantakagize receipt. Naamarayo emyaka 3 batandika kumpa receipt. Ezindi barazishara barazita mu Nssf. So kuzatandikira kuba nyingiho, I started asking my benefits. Mwebare kuja kabari amazina ganje rwakira Bonaventure nkatunga age benefits eje niyo story yanje ya Nssf. First benefits bakampa $1,000,000 9 natandika gukora amatafari ndabika amagoba izindi azikoze umurimo. Then they gave me a second contract. I was given another benefit. 2013 twatandika ekiteekateeko ky'okwombeka ishomero twayeta family. Ekitwokora ekirabaasa kuyamba ishomero eka yitu ningi. Niko twatwagira ngu gwe ekyaro kyaitu kitarimu amashomero mingi katutandike okwombeka ishomero tuyamba abantu. Ogwo n'omukyara wanje baramweta Jovita Gwakira. Hati katunga accident konka nashaba naza kuhereza umuhara wanje abarambuzi.
You're welcome to Uganda Matters Nursery and Primary School. This is the school which my father started in 2014. We started with primary 1 to P4. Now it's from P1 to P7.
Ishomero atandikana n'abana 208 none nabwo abazere kure mu school fees abana bagenda barakindira. Kwa kuti turi kugezaho kwetaga abana abateye n'abazire babo refunds kugira ngo nabo tubayambi bararebesha ishomero ry'utubiri abayambi. Konkati it was a day at school. Now it is a day at the boarding school.
So in boarding school, we have 10 girls and 14 boys. So in total, we have 24 boarders. By the time we started in this office. So after constructing the other second building, we shifted from here and we went to the other office. So from there, he got another money and constructed this second building. This is the first building, and my dad is having a plan of putting in a vocational school.
Benefits za kabiri zikanyamba kongeraho kugura itaka ahubwo kuvuga itaka rikaba riri ikemwe n'iceka unko itaka rishitamahika ishatu n'iceka.
So he's having a plan of constructing here other rooms for vocational.
Ikirabo ikibampira kuga muri Nssf cyanyambire kwikiza kitekateko canje kikagumizamu no kumvikishumira. So ndebaza kitongore cya Nssf tubikire sete none mwe muje muri agambiraga abantu bo wanyu kubashime kubika sete muri Nssf ako kwazirazera bikwaje kazirija kuyamba abantu abo barabaziba mubwira ubu barazindira.
What a touching story from Bonaventure there. And to imagine all that started with a mere 2 million shillings. Imagine what you can do, how much you can dream. Can I encourage you to download the Nssf Go app and start taking a look at how much money you have and start making plans for it and what you can do for it. Otherwise, you might just get it and spend it on a car, which would not be very wise now, will it? To find out how the fund has been performing, it's now my pleasure to introduce the person who is tasked with the responsibility of making sure that our money makes money. Please welcome with me the Nssf MD, Mr. Richard Yarugaba.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think you can do better than that. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. That's better. That's a group of people that are looking good. Since everybody is looking for bail, I thought we would try and bail out our members today. So listen to the story of Nssf this year. What an amazing year I think it has been. And I hope that we put a smile on the face of our members. Because I believe that for a very long time, the Nssf has been doing pedestrian work. But today we're beginning to show the results of all the hard work that we've been putting in for a long time. So 2017, 2018 will hopefully become a milestone for everybody to remember in quite a long time. Of course, Nssf operates in an environment, and I would like to first of all talk about the environment. I'll talk a little bit also about some of the things that we've done to consolidate growth. And in addition to that, we'll talk about the farm's mission, the financial highlights, which is why we're here, because it's been that time of the year where the Auditor General has looked at our books, and hopefully they will give us a good, clean record. And then we'll talk a little bit about the future. And I'm hoping that that future will continue to be the reason why we all want to be at the Nssf. So let's look at the environment in which the fund operated in last year. It was calm. In fact, if you look at the numbers, the rate of growth, as you know, had initially been projected to increase to about 5%, but turned out at about 3.9% in the previous year. And we saw a big improvement during this financial year. And that was largely driven by public sector investment. All the bridges, all the roads, all the dams that the government is constructing, and all the construction that you see has helped improve the economy. There was also a big improvement in the weather. I'm sure you all know that we had a bumper harvest for both agriculture, for maize, and some of the other staples that we all eat. And we also saw an increase in the FDI, which is a lot of the money that came in, that reduced the pressure on the foreign exchange, as I will be showing you. And if you look at the banks, there was an increase in private sector growth, largely driven by the downward turn in terms of the bad loans that had characterized the sector during the previous years. Of course, notwithstanding the perfect resolution or the normalization of the banking sector given the resolution of the current bank situation. So we saw that contributing to the economy growing modestly at about 5.8%. The other part of the economy was the inflation. Again, we saw inflation coming down from 6.4% to about 2.2% on the headline line. And that was largely driven by the fall in core inflation. And that was, again, driven by the fall in food prices or the bump-up crop, which meant that there was food. And because inflation has a big basket of food, and therefore we saw inflation rates come down. The other area that we paid attention to were the interest rates. Interest rates, of course, are a big factor for us because they are one of the determinants of our biggest return. You'll see that most of our assets are in fixed income assets, and therefore interest rates for us is a big deal. So at the start, there was a downward movement, largely driven by the central bank bringing down the CBR rate. We reached a low point towards the end of June 2018, and that has meant that at the end of the period, we reached about 17.7%. That is the lending rate in terms of averages. However, this deterioration or this drop in the interest rates was also driven up by the depreciation. You'll recall that we saw some depreciation, which I'll be talking a little bit about, and as a result of that, it saw a little bit of push-up on the interest rates, but towards the end of the period, rather than in the middle or towards the end of the period. The other comment I'd like to make is on the regional markets. 40% of our assets today are invested out of Uganda. So that means that the interest rate regimes in the rest of East Africa has a big bearing on Uganda and on our portfolio. So we also saw that the interest rates in the region have declined, largely because the central banks there are trying to expand their monetary policies, and therefore bringing down interest rates. You had the interest rate cap in Kenya. You had the expansion of the economy within Tanzania, and we've seen interest rates coming down because the governments are looking for opportunities in which to borrow from the public so that they can invest in the infrastructure, which is a big thing for the region. And as a result of that, you will notice that our fixed income portfolio suffered in terms of return, which is why you'll notice that some of the strategies we've been putting in place is try and diversify out of the fixed income asset class. The next area I'd like to sort of briefly touch on is on the currency. I think the currency of Uganda's story is very well told. We depreciated quite a bit. It ended up at about 8%. At about 8% depreciation. And that's the bad news. The good news is that actually we made a little bit more money, as you'll see later. Because we hold our balances in foreign currency, if our currency depreciates, we are holding more Uganda shillings. I'm sure you sort of get the drift. As they say, there's always a silver lining with every problem. The stock exchange did very well. In the case of Uganda, the stock exchange improved by about 13%. Kenya, about 14%, and there were modest growths in Tanzania and in Rwanda. And this largely helped us in our portfolio on the equities side. So, a modest rebound of the economy meant that we were able to perform quite decently. So let's talk a little bit about our performance. And the first thing I'd like to talk about our performance is the contributions. You'll notice that our contributions grew quite well. We continue to use the relationship management model, and thank you. So there were two ways of looking at it. The first is with the employers. The employers, we continue to engage them, especially on the relationship management, doing road shows and connecting with the customers, especially those who are with the big companies. The second area was on the employees. It was rather a passive management, and we did SMS alerts. Today, if you are registered with us, it is most probable that you will get an SMS alert telling you about what's happening at Nssf. The other area that we have done a lot of development on is on the Nssf Go App. Our Nssf Go App has become very interactive. Today, you can estimate the amount of money you'll have on your account as soon as you start contributing. And you can play with scenarios on interest. You can play on scenarios if you get a pay rise, what you'll be able to save, and therefore plan for when your money matures. We also use the whistleblower, basically driving the companies that were not complying to make sure that if they are not complying, we then are told about it, and then we come in and do an audit. But the biggest growth area has been the voluntary contributions. Our voluntary contributions continue to grow very significantly, and it's all coming out of financial literacy. We are telling people, the generation that we are living in, it will not be possible for us to rely on our children. We will have to rely on the savings we've made. So please put money aside, because when you're old, you're going to be out on your own, and the only form of relief will come out of your savings, and that is working magic. So it has empowered people to save for their future. Of course, we've continued to run the compliance side. If you look at the numbers, we did collect 4 billion shillings out of compliance, and that was largely because of the cases that had already gone to West. In other words, we were not able to collect them. We've taken them to court, and they've been able to come up with the repayment plans, and we've been able to have a good return on contributions. So, what do the numbers look like in terms of collections? For the very first time, we have been able to beat the ceiling of 1 trillion shillings. And I'm expecting a hand clap. It's a new record for us at the fund, and we're pretty excited about this development. What did we do with the money? We invested it. And we invested it using our strategic asset allocation. Just pay a little bit of detail to the graph. So at the beginning of the year, we started off at 77% allocation to fixed income. We had 7% allocation to real estate, and 16% to equities. Our strategic asset allocation, in other words, our optimum position, would be 70 on fixed income, 25 on equities, 5 on real estate, giving us a total of 100%. So what did we do this year? You'll notice that there was improvement on the fixed income. Improvement because we moved from 77 to 75. And let me explain why that's an improvement. I mentioned to you that interest rates have been coming down. So if we've got a big portfolio exposed to interest rates, that means that we need to find a way of earning a little bit more money, and that more money is earned out of equities. And you'll notice that the 2 percentage points that we shed out of fixed income, we actually improved on our equity portfolio. So the equity portfolio went up to 18%, and as a result of that, our returns have improved as a result. We stayed flat on the real estate, just a couple of percentage points, actually a couple of basis points below the level we were at last year. And as a result of that, you'll notice that we also have broken the 1 trillion mark in terms of revenues. And I wanted to do a little bit of research. I can now confirm that the Nssf, I'll say this very slowly, the Nssf is the largest company in terms of turnover and asset size as at today. Turnover with regard to revenue in the whole of this country. So it's one milestone we are really proud to. In fact, the actual amount was 1.6 trillion shillings that we were able to earn. We also kept our costs down. Our costs and benefits that we paid out meant that if you look at our assets, our asset base reached almost 10 trillion shillings, 9.98 trillion shillings, just short of the 10 trillion mark. And our outlook is that by the year 2025, we believe that we are on target to now achieve the 20 trillion mark. Just on top of that graph, you'll see the movement in the amounts that we have been experiencing year on year. When we set up the strategic asset target of 20 trillion by the year 2025, we required a growth rate of 1.4 trillion shillings per year. And you recall that, and you'll see that in the first year, we were only able to achieve 1.1 trillion. In the second year, short of 1.1 trillion. And in the third year, we achieved 1.3 trillion growth. But this year, the growth has gotten to 1.9, almost 2 trillion shillings. So you can imagine, in terms of growth trajectory, we are now seeing the target of 20 trillion in 2025 right in sight. A couple of other numbers, especially on our efficiency, especially relating to our operating costs. In the year 2015-16, we were generating 8.5 shillings in income using the costs. That number went up to 9.5 in the following year. And this year we've had a really, really good year. And it's gone up to 14 shillings that we are generating for every amount of 14 shillings that we are spending for every income that we generate, which means that our efficiencies are going up. And if you look at the graph that's at the bottom of the screen, you'll notice that that is the cost graph, which has remained flat, and the revenue graph has continued to go up. So our operating costs have remained very flat, and our operating income continues to really go up. So we'd like to say well done, but we shouldn't forget that our members have defined what our purpose is. And they've told us two things. The first thing is that we have to pay them their benefits on time. It used to take a very long time to get your benefits when you qualified. We must do it on time. Number two, we must give them a good return, because they keep their money for us a long time. And we have got to give them a return which gives them a real rate of return, which means that they've got to do a little bit better than the rate of inflation. So how have we performed on those measures? The first one is benefits. We continue to improve our efficiencies. If you look at our growth rates on benefits, 29% year-on-year growth. But if you look at, on average, that has been increasing by 22%. The other measure is obviously the interest rate. We have said that our hurdle rate will be 2 percentage points above 10-year moving average inflation. Okay? That is the benchmark which we were given in order to protect our members. In other words, we're giving a real return based on the rate of inflation drawn over a 10-year period, because we are a long-term investor. Again, on this race we are clearly ahead of the pack. A little bit of graphs for you. So the first graph is the rate of inflation averaged over 10 years. The next line is the minimum required return, so that's 2 percentage points above inflation. And the green line is the rate of return we've been paying to our members. So the previous year we paid 11.5, we paid 13%, it went down to 12.3, and last year it went down to 11.23%. And you'll notice conspicuously that number doesn't exist because I don't have the authority to say it. So I'm hoping that when the minister is given an opportunity to mention it, he will be able to give a good number. And he can, because guess what? There is sufficient room for us to be able to do it, if you've been following with the numbers. So, stay tuned. I would not be doing any service, just giving you how the numbers look like. So let's look at the numbers. For those of you who are accountants, just pay a little bit of attention. Our income has grown by 77%. Clap. And our costs have only increased by 20%. So that means that we have a huge surplus. In fact, a surplus of 1.4 trillion shillings to share with our members. The main movements, as you can see, is around interest income. Our interest income grew from 781 billion shillings to 978 billion shillings. And that is not largely because of the interest rates going up, as I mentioned, but it's because of volume. So we collected a lot more money and were able to invest it and therefore get a good return from the previous year. The second other area of growth was on the fair value and the appreciation of the currency. And you'll notice that that grew from 27 to 145 to 387. Okay? That, again, is because of the good performance of the stock exchange and also the good performance of the currency. Obviously, depreciating currency means that we have more assets available to us in terms of revenue. The other growth, obviously, was on expenditure, and that was largely because of salary. We had salary raises for staff, and then we are also paying a huge levy to the Uganda Benefits Regulatory Authority, which is our regulator. The law currently says that we've got to pay a percentage of our assets to the regulator in order to help them in managing the operations. So as the asset grows, you'll see that the number is continuing to grow on our expenses side. But all in all, you can see that the surplus grew from 816 billion to 1.4 trillion shillings, which is quite a good jump. On the balance sheet side, or what you call statement of financial position, again, you notice that the big growth, the key movements were on the equities held for trading, grew from 88 billion to 112 billion. Investments in securities grew from 5.7 trillion to 5.7 trillion to 7.3 trillion. Equities held at fair value through the profit and loss grew from 899 billion to 1.3 trillion. There were also growths in investment properties from 188 to 464, and that's really as a result of the projects that we are running. You know that we are running the project of Lubowa, where we've started to break ground and we've started construction. We are almost finishing Buya. We are in the process of starting pension towers as well. So all those big projects that had been on hold for a very long time have now started becoming investment products. That's why we have reclassified them, and they are now beginning to earn us money once we've finished the construction period. On the liabilities, the biggest movement has really been around the reserve. the reserves and the accumulated balances for our members. And our member balance has grown from 7.6 trillion shillings to 9.4 trillion shillings. And the accumulated balance, including the reserve accounts, have also grown quite considerably from about 260 billion to 27 billion shillings. Trying to add the numbers. So again, very good growth, showing that and demonstrating that we now have sufficient reserve for our members should future periods be lean. So we hope this performance will put a smile on your face. That's where it started. But it didn't happen by accident. So let's talk a little bit about our journey. Our journey began in 2015. That's when we agreed the 10-year strategic plan. And that strategic year plan was to have 4 deliverables. Deliverable number 1 was that we needed customers engaged, happy at 95%. Target number 2 was to make sure that we could process our benefits within 1 day. Target number 3 was to make sure that we had a fund that was worth 20 trillion. And target number 4 was to make sure that our staff were engaged to the tune of 95%. So those were the ingredients. That's our vision. That's the one that's been driving us. How do we achieve these targets? So how are we faring so far? So if you start off with our customers, we are at 78%. Our target this year was at 91%. And you might think that that's a low number. Actually, what's happened is we've reclassified it and included in more variables. We used to use an indicator which only included the data we were using internally. We've now started using external data, and we've started using data that's also done by a third party in order to bring in independence. And that has brought some home truths to us. And therefore, this year we ended at an index which shows that the customers are happy to 78%. Our target is to get them to 95% by the year 2025. The second variable is the number of days it takes to process our benefits. Today it takes us about 8 days. We had targeted to be on 7 days. You recall, we want to be on 1 day by the year 2025. So again, we missed our target slightly by a day, and we're working towards that. However, on an average basis, that figure is 8. However, on the end of year period, it is 7 days. So we actually achieved the 7, but on an average, because we had some high days in the year, it came out at an average of 8. Of course, the balance sheet. The balance sheet, we exceeded our target. We had thought would be at around 9.1 trillion, but we've ended up at 9.9 or almost 10 trillion shillings. So again there, we've exceeded at 110%. And then finally on the people, we've come out at 86% against a target of 75%. So we've again exceeded on that at 115%. So a little bit of mixed bags on the number of days and on the customer side. But if you look at the balance sheet size and on our people side, we've actually exceeded targets for this particular year. So the journey has begun. The journey looks very good. And the journey is that we will continue to provide our members with a better life. So I'd like to pay tribute to those guys, some of those guys that are in the picture. That's our staff. Our staff have absolutely been great. So thank you so much. I know that there are lots of them here. We couldn't have done it without you. So thank you so much. And I'd like everybody to really, if there's anybody next to you that's a member of staff, thank them for us. They've done a great job. Of course, the board chairman and his team have been great in terms of providing guidance. I will not forget them, but the chairman will have his moment to come and talk about that. So well done to all of you. And thank you.
Let's give another very big hand clap to Richard Byarugaba. 4 big numbers. I know he's gone through a lot of numbers, but 4 big numbers for you to take note of. The first one is that more than 1 trillion shillings in contributions from members. That deserves a big hand clap. That's a big number. It essentially means that we have money. The second big number is 1.6 trillion shillings, which is how much money the fund has made in income. That's another big number. The other number, of course, to take note of is the 10 trillion shillings in terms of assets that the fund is managing right now. And the fourth big number is the interest rate for this year, which is going to be, well, I don't know, because that's why we're here to find out. But based on what we have had so far, I think it's only fair to assume that we should be having a decent number today. So a big, big hand clap to Nssf and the amazing job that they have done so far. For those of you joining us on TV, on NBS, NTV, and UBC, those of us here at the Palo Africa Hotel have been playing a game since morning, and we're trying to imagine what you would do with 10 trillion shillings if it was given to you as an individual. So do join us in that game, and of course, ask any questions you might have. We'll be doing a Q&A session later where we'll get to answer any questions that you might have. The hashtag is NSSFAMM18. That is hashtag NSSFAMM18. And while you're there, do tell us, what would you do with 10 trillion shillings as an individual? Would like to know. Now, to make sense of all the numbers that we've been hearing, of course, we need a qualified report, someone who can come and verify the things that we have heard are true. And that job is the duty of the Auditor General. And right now, we're going to hear from the Assistant Auditor General to come and present their report in terms of how the fund has performed. So please welcome with me the Assistant Auditor General, Mrs. Keto Nyapendi Kayemba, as she comes.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Wow, the room is full. I didn't know Nssf was so. The Minister, the Honorable Minister, the Board Chair, the MD, board members, staff, members of Nssf, ladies and gentlemen, I greet you all. I am Nssf number 032525. And I'm a very rich woman as I stand here. Very, very rich. When I look at my accounts, I'm extremely excited. But I'm here today to represent the Auditor General. Mr. Auditor General, Mr. John Mwanga is on leave, and he's with us here. He's also an Nssf member. He didn't give me his number, but he's with us in spirit. I'm here to present this report after those great numbers that you saw from the MD. MD, thank you so much with your team for those great numbers, the 10 trillion and the 2 trillion and the 5 trillion. I don't know how many trillions. We are just going to start talking about trillions. So let me read. This report is extremely important, as you all know, because it's the one that gives you assurances such that you are comfortable as you sit in your seats as to what they did with your money. The report of the Auditor General on the financials of Nssf for the year ended 30th June 2018. The Right Honourable Speaker of Parliament. Opinion. I have audited the financial statements of National Social Security Fund, which comprise of the statements of net assets available for benefits as at 30th June 2018, and the statements of changes in net assets available for benefits, statement of changes in members' funds and reserves, and statement of cash flows for the year then ended, and notes to the financial statements, including a summary of significant accounting policies as set on pages 13 to 111. I hope they can access these accounts on the web page. I hope they can. According to the National Audit Act, I may contract professional audit firms to assist in execution of my functions. I have contracted Ernst & Young to carry out this audit on my behalf. I carried out the necessary internal supervisory procedures to enable me to own the audit that was carried out. In my opinion, the financial statements fairly, in all material respects, represents the financial position of the fund as at 30th June 2018. And of its financial performance and its cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with international financial reporting standards and in the manner required by the Uganda Retirement Benefits Regulatory Authority and the Nssf Act. The basis of my opinion. I conducted my audit in accordance with the international standards of auditing. My responsibilities under those standards are further described in the auditor's responsibilities for the audit of the financial statement section of my report. I'm independent of the fund in accordance with the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda 1995 as amended, the National Audit Act 2008, the International Ethics Standards Board for Accountants Code of Ethics for Professional Accountants Part A and B, and other independence requirements applicable to performing audits of financial statements in Uganda. I have fulfilled my other ethical responsibilities in accordance with the IESBA Code and in accordance with other ethical requirements applicable to performing audits in Uganda. I believe that the audit evidence I have obtained is sufficient and appropriate to provide a basis for my opinion. Emphasis of matter. These are things that we want you to understand better. Without qualifying my opinion, meaning my opinion is clean. The Auditor General, I've already read his opinion. The opinion is clean. Can we clap for that? It is an unmodified opinion. It's an unqualified opinion. It is a clean opinion. Therefore, the figures that were presented to you by the MD, we are okay with those figures, and they represent a true reflection of what happened in the entity for the year 30th June, ending 30th June 2018. Now, without qualifying that opinion, I draw your attention to notes 31, 32, and 35B to the financial statements. Bullet 1, unallocated members' funds. Notes 31 and 32 to the financial statements show unallocated member funds of 40.85 billion shillings, a reduction from 48.4 billion. These are contributions received from employers which had not yet been allocated to the members' individual accounts because of incomplete members' records and errors in the members' records. Bullet number 2, URA tax matter. Note 35B of the financial statements indicates that the fund is challenging the basis on which the URA disallowed certain expenses. The directors have not recognized any provision for the liability of 42.2 billion to the URA, as management believes the tax treatment adopted by Nssf is in accordance with the provisions of Section 221A and Section 25 of the Income Tax Act. The note gives details of the case and explains that the directors have disclosed the matter as a contingent liability, as the ultimate outcome of the case cannot presently be determined. So we just bring your attention to those two elements, but there is not much in relation. It does not impair the opinion that the Auditor General has on the financial statements. Key audit matters. According to Standard 1800, ISA 700, the auditor is supposed to look at issues that are of significance and carry out certain procedures on them. Based on that, this financial year, we had 2 key audit matters. Key audit matters are those matters that, in my professional judgment, were of more significance in my audit of the financial statements of the current period. These matters were addressed in the context of my audit of the financial statements as a whole and informing my opinion thereon, and I do not provide a separate opinion on these statements. The first one, litigation and other claims. The fund has legal matters as disclosed in Note 35C to the financial statements. I focused on this because some of the legal matters relating to claims over the fund's investment property are the subject of media coverage and are of interest to the fund's members. Assessing the liabilities and contingencies that could arise from legal matters involves judgment. I also considered the risk that the disclosures in Note 35C to the financials, which are significant to the understanding of the fund's financial exposure to litigation, may not be complete. I had to understand the fund's processes for recording and assessing litigation procedures and contingent liabilities. I evaluated the completeness and reasonableness of the amounts recognized as litigation liabilities and contingent liabilities, including the assessment of the legal reports by the fund's internal and external auditors. I obtained direct confirmations from the firm's external lawyers and compared the confirmed positions with the fund's management assessment of the likely outcome of the legal matters. Furthermore, I obtained written representation from the fund's directors regarding completeness of the legal matters. I also assessed the adequacy of the fund's disclosures in relation to litigation based on the procedures performed. I had no significant issues in the litigation and other claims against the fund. The second key audit matter was accounting for investment in associates. As at 30th June 2018, the carrying amount of investments in associates was 300 billion. As disclosed in Note 21 to the financial statements, investments in associates are carried at cost and adjusted for post-acquisition changes in the fund's share of net assets of the associates, less any impairment in value. The financial reporting periods for the associates is 31st December, thus necessitating the fund to use half-year unaudited financial reports for the purpose of determining the fund's share of post-acquisition changes in net assets of the associates. Valuation of investments in associates was considered a key audit matter due to the significance of the fund's interest in associates and the judgments involved in the impairment assessment of the investments. I also considered the risk that the disclosures in Note 21 to the financial statements, which are significant to the understanding of the fund's investments in associates, may not be complete. My audit procedures included understanding the fund's processes for recording the fund's share of post-acquisition changes in net assets of the associates and other changes in the carrying amount of the investments. In addition, I had to understand the fund's processes for assessing impairment of investments in associates. I assessed whether the computation of the fund's share of post-acquisition changes in net assets of the investments of the associates was in accordance with the fund's shareholding and associates' financial statements. I ascertained whether the fund's disclosure in respect to investments in associates were adequate. Based on the procedures I performed, I noted no significant issues in relation to accounting for investments in associates and the relevant disclosures. In my report, other information, it mentions other information that the directors give. It also talks about the responsibilities of the directors to prepare the financial statements. It also talks about my detailed responsibilities in the audit to ensure that I give you proper assurance, reasonable assurance over the activities taken by the organization. I wish to conclude, because I haven't done that in detail. You can read it in the financials. I wish to conclude, therefore, that the Auditor General gave a clean opinion on the accounts of Nssf, and the report is accordingly signed by Mr. John F.S. Mwanga. Thank you.
Another big hand clap for the Assistant Auditor General, Mrs. Keto Nyapendi. In case you're not a numbers person, what she has basically said is one thing, that your money is safe. And that's a big thing, especially in Uganda. When you give someone a lot of money, for it to be safe is something worthy of recognition. So a big thank you to the Auditor General for that clean bill of health for the fund. Remember, the key words for our annual members meeting are two: transparency and accountability. And that's why it's important to have the Auditor General being able to verify the fact that our money is being managed well, even as it is growing. I want to pick up on something that was mentioned by the MD earlier today, and it was picked up in a tweet by Joachim Buembo, who is here somewhere at the back. And he says this. Remember, our hashtag on Twitter is hashtag NSSFAMM18. And Joachim retweets something that Richard said. And he says, it's a big wake-up call by the MD. And the wake-up call is this, that this generation will not rely on their children in old age. You need to build your savings. And that's a take-home for every one of us. And especially those of you watching, wherever you might be. Do not wait to depend on your children in old age. Don't depend on us, we won't be there for you. Build your own savings. It's as simple as that, and very important. And it is indeed a wake-up call. So start now and start saving. No matter how small it might be, it ends up making a very huge difference. Do join us on Twitter, on social media. We're streaming live on Facebook and on YouTube. You can follow us, of course, on all the social media pages for UBC, NTV, and NBS, and of course on Twitter as well. In a moment, we'll hear from the Nssf board chair, which will be coming up right after this short promo.
While you work tirelessly to meet your deadlines in the office or in your business, ask yourself, are your savings guaranteed to offer you a better life? While you take a break and spend the weekend with your family, ask yourself, are your savings guaranteed to offer you a better life? While you plan your retirement, ask yourself, are your savings guaranteed to offer you a better life? Well, join us at this year's Nssf annual members meeting on the 28th of August 2018 at the Pearl of Africa Hotel starting at 8 a.m. and find out how your savings will guarantee a better life for you and your family. The meeting is open to all members. All you have to do is book your seat today by registering online at www.nssfug.org. You can also follow the meeting live on NTV, NBS, UBC, Facebook and Twitter. For more information, call our toll-free line on 0800-286-773.
Nssf, a better life.
Welcome back, and you're watching us on NTV, on NBS, and on UBC. This is the Nssf annual members meeting for 2018. My name is Ben Mwine. We're getting closer to the big announcement to find out how much money we have made, and we're running a poll. If you go to at NSSFUG, you can try and speculate how much money you think we're going to be getting in interest. Before we do that, though, I'd like to invite the chairman of the National Social Security Fund for Uganda, Mr. Patrick Byabakama Kaberenge.
Yes, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So happy to see you. As I was entering here, through the doors, I found a little music playing. And as I walked to my chair, I could just feel a festive atmosphere. And I want to confirm that I think there is real need to feel festive at Nssf this morning. The news is good, and it is going to be better. Statement. Honorable Minister, Dr. Engineer Gabriel Jedra, honorable members of parliament, I believe we have a few around us with us, members of the National Social Security Board of Directors, I can see them in front here. The Managing Director of Nssf, Mr. Richard Biarugaba, and your executive team. I can see a proud team in front here. Many of the chief executives of various institutions and employers who have accorded our function presence. Nssf registered members, and as we talk now, we are talking of 2 million members. You might be 1,000 here or so, but you represent the soul of that other bigger membership. Nssf staff present who continue to make the difference at Nssf, distinguished guests in your various capacities, and in particular here I want to mention the Auditor General, represented by Madam Keto Nyapendi, the Assistant Auditor General, and Mr. Masuba. Am I right? Eh? Mr. Yes, I'm sorry. I keep. Mr. Joseph Hiria, Mr. Biamugisha from Ernst and Young, the external auditors who have looked through the figures over the last 1 month. Dear friends, it is with great pleasure that I welcome you to this 60th annual members meeting. And I've been privileged to attend at least 4. This is my 4th. Honorable Minister, sir, before I go into the detail of my speech, as we are at the end of our Ksanja as Board of Directors, the 3-year term, I want to introduce to you some of the members of my team. We've been 9 members who have run the institution for good corporate governance over the last 3 years, and I want to introduce the members who are around. I start with Mrs. Sarah Walusimbi. Next to her is Mr. She has been representing employers. You know, we are tripartite. We have a team that represents the workers, the team that represents the employers, and the team that represents the government. We are a tripartite. So Sarah has been representing employer. Next to her is Mr. Andrew Stewart Obita. That small man, as you can see, he represents the workers and he's done a wonderful job. He has also been chairing our finance subcommittee of the board. Sarah was chairing the audit and risk committee. Next to Mr. Obita is Mrs. Florence Namata Maweje. She is the general manager HR at Centenary Bank, and she chairs our HR subcommittee of the board. We call it SACA. Next to Madame Florence is our youngest member of the board, Nalongo. Can you be up? Penina Tukamwesiga, she's a lawyer. She represents the workers. And I think Mr. Ofana may be on the way. Then, if I turn the other side, from management, we have one representative. The CEO, Mr. Richard Byarugaba, is a member of our board. If you can stand up again for recognition. And the other few members in absentia have sent their greetings. They are out on various state duties. Mr. Pius Bigirimana, the PS Gender, Mr. Patrick Ochailap, Deputy Secretary to the Treasury, and I think Mr. Wafana Nelson. Those three have not been able to be with us. And as you've been told, Mr. Minister, I have been the team leader of that 9-member team as board chairman. Honorable Minister, sir, 2017-2018 is the third year of implementing our 10-year grand strategy. From 2015, the board sat and said we must have a direction to make a difference to the fund, to bring renewed confidence. And we said it would take us 10 years. So far, we have finished 3 years. And the pillars were already highlighted by the MD. We said we should base ourselves on 4 pillars to ensure we grow this fund to 20 trillion in 10 years. But as things are moving, and as the economy of Uganda is also growing, we think even 20 trillion target is an understatement. Because out there, the international best practice is that a national savings fund should have at least 20% of GDP, of the economy. The economy of Uganda, I think, is around $30 billion. Now, if you see $30 billion, 20% of that comes to $6 billion. So our fund, all being equal, we should target to ensure it reaches at least $6 billion. Then we can have the safety we are all desiring to have. So, as of now, we are about $2.7 billion. So we have some way to go. And those of you who will be around to see this story, this nice story, will be telling you how far we shall have gone towards that target. The targets, as we talk today, they are all on course. They are all on course. And I think once again, I want to ask members, those of you who are here representing the other 2 million, to clap for management and your board. Honorable Minister, you gave us a target when we joined on 1st of September 2015 to grow the fund and manage it in a profitable manner for the benefit of its members and the country at large. I want to say that we have largely delivered on this mandate, and I would like to indulge you to give you a few highlights of what we have been able to achieve in the last 36 months. In summary and overview terms, over the last 3 years, we have overseen a profitable fund, and as a result, we have paid a competitive return to our members 2 percentage points above the 10-year average rate of inflation. In 2016, we paid 12.3%, a double digit. Last year, the economy, we move with the economy. The economy was slightly at a slower pace, and we paid you 11.23%. We are going to pay you a better interest this year. The minister will tell us. Assets under management, or the fund strength, the size of the fund, has continued to grow. By the time we took over the fund in 2015, the total strength of the fund was 5.68 trillion Uganda shillings. As we talk today, the fund is slightly over 10 trillion shillings. We had wanted to double that number with which we were given at the start, but we didn't want to do too much risky investments which could lose your capital savings. So we have to be judicious as we quest for better returns so that we don't lose our capital investment. But we are growing. Accountability to our members. Honorable Minister, we also pledged to promote transparency at the fund, and I'm glad to report that every year for the last 3 years, we have consistently held the annual members meeting, during which the performance of the fund is discussed by the MD and feedback obtained from members. Together with the management, we have ingrained a culture of transparency and accountability at the fund. Mr. Minister, sir, during our term, and I recall the date was 29th of December 20. Oh, she says my voice is becoming hoarse. Very clever senior manager. She is acting deputy managing director of Nssf. Her name is called Barbara Teddy Arimi, and we got apologies from Mr. Patrick Ayota, deputy managing director, who is representing us in the UK and the USA to the diaspora to tell them about our housing projects. So we are really moving. So I recall on 29th of December 2015, we celebrated our 30 years of presence, and we renewed our promise to members to run the fund in their best interest, and I want to believe that we have certainly done that. Staff recruitment and retention. Honorable Minister, sir, the fund has witnessed stability under our tenure like never before. No fujo at Nssf. We recruited a competent and experienced top management who have continued to deliver impressive results over the years. Our emphasis on merit-based recruitment has permeated the fund, as evidenced by consistently good performance throughout the fund by staff at all levels. As a board, we support and reward good performance and promote harmony at all levels in the fund. Actually, people have been asking us, we don't hear anything in the papers these days. Why are you so quiet? Yes, we are quiet because we are working. Resumption, Mr. Minister, of stalled real estate projects at Nssf. Honorable Minister, with our funding strength, we are one of those institutions in Uganda that can concentrate on a sector and make a difference. And we thought if we concentrated on the housing sector, we could make a whole difference. Because housing continues to be an issue in Uganda, and we think Nssf, before we go to external aid, could make an impact here. And we thought as a board, we should focus on reigniting the stalled real estate projects. And maybe why had they stalled? Maybe some people should ask. Perhaps because of governance, and because everybody thought even if they had only built a two-bedroom, three-bedroom house, they would want to build a 10-storied house project at Nssf. They thought everybody could come in, and it was an issue, but we have streamlined that. And Honorable Minister, the fund has now prioritized these building projects, and in spite of numerous setbacks occasioned by, at times, undue administrative reviews, lengthy procurement processes, we have restarted most of the projects, and these include Jinja City House project. This was valued at $1 million. It was completed in June this year, and we were there with Madam Rebecca Kadaga, the Speaker of Parliament, to open its doors. We have been building some houses, apartments in Mbuya, 56 of them. They will be finished in the next 2 months. And please, those of you interested in this, contact our marketing people. Many people have already paid and deposited some money. And those of you who have this, what do you call it? The brochure, Nssf brochure. If you look at the front, there are some good pictures of these houses which are going to be finished and ready for entry in the next 2 months. So please take a part. If you have a relative in the diaspora, please take interest. We broke ground, I think it was also last year, we broke ground for the $400 million Roboa housing project. where 2,741 houses are going to be built with associated amenities for middle to high income earners. In the infrastructure works are ongoing. In Imbarara, we also have a building similar to that we built in Jinja, and this one is going to be finished in the next 3 months. Those of you who come from those ends, this year, 2018-2019, we are starting similar representative offices and houses for rent block in Gulu and in Bali. And this has already been approved by the various authorities. And finally, after a long protracted procurement process, which has taken us 3 years, we finally have a contractor for pension towers. It has not been easy. And the work will start within 2 to 3 months. They are mobilizing. They have already taken over. And as I told you, the other annual members meeting, you see this building here, it is iconic, perhaps largest in Kampala as we talk today. But 2-3 years along the road, we are going to have Nssf building, pension towers being the best, highest, iconic building in Kampala. And the total cost of that building is $110 million of our money. We are not borrowing our money. Mr. Minister, sir, when an enterprise is successful like Nssf, I know government would always like some little share. And we've been paying some tax as well, sir. In 2015, we paid 102 billion Uganda shillings as tax. Last year, we paid 136 billion to URA. This year, we have paid 145 billion to URA. We are a responsible citizen, corporate citizen. Honorable Minister, as we leave our task after 3 years, I must say after a successful 3 years, we want to give you a little comment on the future outlook, how we would love to see the fund in the short to medium future. The fund's performance is on an upward trajectory. As you have seen all those graphs and bar charts in the brochure, they are all going up, 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 up. We are confident that given a better legal framework, Nssf can perform even much better. Nssf Amendment Act, Cabinet approved on the 6th of March of this year, but it needs to be processed through Parliament as soon as possible. We are appealing you take this up further. The PPDA Act was legislated to improve procurement systems in Uganda. But unfortunately, it brought unintended consequences. You go through that process, any Tom, Dick, and Harry can come and stop the process midway. He says, look, I should have taken this contract, let us go to court, and you delay for another 1 year. You move, you delay another 2 years. Africa cannot progress with these slow processes. So PPDA Act, Honorable Minister, needs urgent review. We are told that you've been working on this for some time. We were told so in 2015. We are now in 2018. We hope by the end of perhaps the financial year or thereabout, this act should be out so that it can enable us to invest with speed. We are operating in a private sector environment. If you take 4, 5, 6 months to pass over and review market-sensitive information, you always lose. So please, Honorable Minister, if you can help us with those two particular legislations, the future of Nssf can be a lion, a roaring lion. We would love more people to participate in Nssf as members. We are talking of 2 million. But Uganda, we have a population of 40 million. And people who are working somewhere could be about as many as 15 million. So we are saying, look, we want to provide for them much better. Government has a pension scheme, but how many people are there? I don't know. Maybe 500,000. So really that is too low. So we are targeting that within 5 years or thereabout, we should have at least 5 million people joining Nssf. And people are running, especially asking for this voluntary product. They want to participate. They have seen success. People want to ride on success. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, nobody wants to put his 1 million in Nssf. But now people are queuing to save. They are seeing it works. The other year, we paid 17,000 members. This year, we have paid 23,300 members. We paid them 360 billion. Cash, they were getting their money. Roughly 1 billion per day. So they are seeing it works. Mr. Minister, we shall also continue to invest diligently. We want to tap into investment opportunities in East Africa so that we can grow this fund to that $6 billion I've been talking about. But at times even African Development Bank comes to us, they want us to invest there. But because of our restrictive law under the UBRA, we can't invest there, even when they have good products. We think the law, maybe UBRA law, should also be reviewed so that we can invest where we think it is safe and where we can get a good return. We want to continue paying members double digit. That is our target. 2 percentage points above 10-year rate of inflation. That was our promise some years ago. It continues to be our promise, and we would love it to go on for some time before we make an actuarial review to see whether we can increase it or adjust appropriately. We want to focus on unlocking the value in these stalled projects, pension towers, Lubowa, Temangalo, and Nsimbi. You heard something about Temangalo. With us, we do not, we always do due diligence. We did due diligence. We found there was no problem. We checked with the Minister of Lands, everything, everybody said okay, including prominent lawyers in this city, and we bought, and we have the title, and nobody is going to disturb us. We shall continue defending our rights, your rights. Finally, Honorable Minister, we remain committed to ensuring stability at the fund through firm corporate governance structures that underpin principles of accountability, fairness, transparency, and good leadership. We want good leadership at the board. We want good leadership at the top management. We want good leadership at the supervisory levels of Nssf so that the prosperity we all desire can be achieved. As I finish my speech, Honorable Minister, I wanted to read you 2 quotations. 2 small quotations. And this one is by a British writer, and we need to quote more African writers like Chinua Achebe, but this one is a British writer, and he said, success has always been easy to measure. It is the distance between one's origins and one's final achievement. That is success. You have seen where Nssf was some years ago. You have seen where we are. Now you can determine the distance we have gone. And we can conclude that certainly we are successful. And we shall continue on that trajectory. Mr. Minister, my last small quote is directed more to the members. And this one is by some motivational speaker. He's still alive. He's called David Dunotaris. He's a US man. And he says, dissatisfaction is a great starting point, for it is right there that we have the most power, strength, and energy to push change through. That's the quote. Dissatisfaction is a great starting point, for it is right there that we have the most power, strength, and energy to push change through. We know members have certain areas you are not happy about. We are performing, but we could perform better. Give us those areas where you are not dissatisfied. And they will give us energy, they will give us power for us to perform even much better for Nssf. Those are the last two quotes I wanted you to take home as I conclude. The speech is finished. And I now have the pleasure to invite the Honorable Dr. Engineer Gabriel Ajedra to come and do two things: to announce the interest rate and make his remarks to this good audience.
Here. Just put this one here. I'll take that one. I think you know the moment everybody.
I think the moment everybody has been waiting for has come. And of course, I could not announce it until the Auditor General had given her opinion. Now that the books are fine, everything is fine. Ladies and gentlemen, in the exercise of powers conferred upon me by Section 35(2) of the Nssf Security Fund Act, and after consultation with the Board of Directors, I am pleased to declare that the fund will pay an annual interest rate of
I think we should be a bit more excited than that. Can we give a standing ovation to Nssf for the amazing job they have done, ladies and gentlemen? We are basically very rich now. You may have your seats. We'll now hear the remarks from Honorable Gaga, as I like to call him.
So congratulations, Nssf and the members. My colleague members of Parliament here present, the Chairman Board of Directors of Nssf, Mr. Patrick Babkama, the members of Nssf Board, the Managing Director of Nssf, Mr. Richard Yarugaba, Chief Executive Officers here present, members of Nssf and the staff of Nssf here present, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I want to bring the apologies of my senior minister, Honorable Kasaija. He's out of the country on official duties. And I am holding the portfolio, so be assured the announcement is legally correct. And it gives me much pleasure to preside over this year's Nssf annual members meeting, which is now the sixth in this sixth year. I'm impressed by the fund's commitment to be transparent to its members, stakeholders, and the country at large, something that we as government need to replicate across all agencies. I'm also impressed that in less than 2 months after the end of the financial year, the Auditor General has already concluded his report, finalized an audit of the fund's books of accounts, and this also needs to be replicated across government. I think important to note is that the Auditor General's report, as well as the Managing Director's performance report, show that the fund is of sound financial standing, having achieved and in some cases surpassed the targets that we as Ministry of Finance set for the board. Although this good performance is in part aided by commendable economic growth of 5.8%, I also want to underscore the good performance of the fund. And in that regard, I want to commend the board, the management, and the staff for a remarkable job. And I believe since everybody was asking for hand clap, I also asked for one for those staff. As has been alluded to, the total assets under the management now stands close to 10 trillion, which makes the fund the biggest provident fund in the East African region and the biggest financial institution in Uganda. This pool of savings is available for investment within the country, and for that I want also to thank the management and the team for the critical role they are playing in mobilizing domestic funding. I think just to give you a picture, I know the chairman of the board of directors mentioned it. If you want to look at the picture, as of now, Uganda's GDP, that's a gross domestic product is about 110 billion. Trillion, 110 trillion. And Nssf, you can see the assets are about 10 trillion. That's about 10%. And therefore, we are hoping that you'll be able to reach the 20% mark, which is really the benchmark for most countries where members have their savings within the target period of 2025. The growth in members, the fund's membership over the last 3 years has grown from 500,000 to now about 2.2 million. You can imagine within the last 3 years, the number has almost quadrupled. And the number of employees now employers, is 33,200. So you can see we have had a tremendous growth in the last 3 years. More people are saving with the fund, and more employers are willing to fulfill their mandatory statutory obligations regarding social security. This is good because the government plan is to ensure social security inclusion for all Ugandans, and we are confident that the Cabinet's approval of the proposed principles to amend the Act will facilitate this further. And I remember the chairman making a comment here that we need to expedite the amendment of the Nssf Act. I want to confirm that Cabinet has concluded its blessings, and now it is with the first Parliamentary Council where they will now be drafting the amendments to the Act. So as soon as the first Parliamentary Council concludes it, we will then table it back into Cabinet to make sure that it is in line with the principles that we had agreed in March, and then I will take it to Parliament for approval. The other comment that the chairman talked about is the review of the PPDA Act. I want also to confirm that we have concluded the amendments, and that is also with the first Parliamentary Council. We should be able to have those amendments made very quickly. But I wanted to pause and make a brief comment here, where most of the time, without giving you what is coming, I think one of the problems has been this whistleblowing, which is, of course, part of our laws, and that's what stalls real projects. But it requires agencies, institutions such as Nssf to be very fair, transparent in evaluation of bids. I make this comment because I know how that act was intended to work. There is a distortion of how that act works. In Botswana, where I was working as a chief government advisor on projects, we had made the provisions very clear that if, for example, a bidder loses, the appeal is to the tribunal, and the decision of the tribunal is final. Even if you appeal to the High Court, we shall only compensate you for the costs incurred in preparing a bid, but it will not overturn the decision of tribunal. So that is what is coming in an act, and I do hope that we'll be able to cut down on the process that you guys face in the long procurement processes. There was also a comment about the fact that Nssf cannot invest outside East African region. I want to say here that based on my experience, also and the experience of those who have had the opportunity to work outside this country, we have a lot of pension funds coming from Europe being invested in Africa. Most of these projects you see here, infrastructure projects, are actually being funded through pension funds. So I think that restriction is limiting the growth of your money. And provided that management and the board take what we call calculated risks in terms of what they can invest outside the country, I think your money should be able to grow much more than what it is growing at today. So we'll request proposals from Nssf. If there's need for us to review the UBRA Act, definitely we shall do so for purposes of growing your money. Total member contributions topped 1.05 trillion, which signifies member trust and confidence in the fund. Otherwise, there will have been no contribution increase to the members. Additionally, over 360 billion in benefits was paid to qualifying members, as alluded to by the chairman of the board of directors, which also shows that the fund is fulfilling its mandate. I think, as he said, they were almost paying 1 billion Uganda shillings every day, per day. Actually, if you look at it, since there are 5 working days, if you discount it by 2 days, it means you are paying over 1.something billion per day to members. I think that is something we need to commend you for. This is the first time in the fund's history that the fund has declared an interest rate of 15% to its members. This is the first time in its history. The rate I've just declared is significantly higher than the 11.23% I declared in the last financial year, because the fund has performed a lot better in all financial and investment indications. The rate is also significantly higher than the 10-year average rate of inflation, which is around 7.4%. So essentially, you have been cushioned against the future erosion of your investments by about 7.6%. So you can see that in net terms, which the economists like to call the net present value, is definitely much better than what it was. Each percentage point is equivalent to about 73.5 billion, which means that the new rate I have declared translates into 1.1 trillion that will be credited to your accounts as members, compared to the 681 billion paid out in the previous year. And that represents an increase of about 61% in terms of payments. The interest rate will be calculated and credited on the balance outstanding on the members' accounts as of 1st July 2017, and in accordance with the provisions of Nssf Act. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, I want to thank really the management, the staff, and the board of directors, and I also want to pledge government commitment to support the fund. It is through such institutions that we will grow the culture of savings in this country, which is, by the way, very, very poor. We remain steadfast in our focus on the macroeconomic stability of the economy of Uganda. I want to thank you for listening to me, and I wish you very fruitful deliberations. I say this for God and my country. Participants, I would have loved to stay around to have the discussions and comments, listen to the discussions and comments from members. But unfortunately, I have to travel to Tororo and go and see and receive His Excellency the President, where he's going to commission a new cement factory. And for information, that was when I was still the investment minister about 4 years ago. So I need to be there present to go and receive him at the commissioning of that facility. So you'll excuse me if I disappear immediately, but I wish you very fruitful deliberations for the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. After making us 15% richer, it's okay. You can go to the US if you want. We have no problem with it. In fact, you know what? We'll pay for it if you want. That's how rich we now are. Another big hand clap for the Honorable Minister, Gabriel Ajedra, who has done an amazing job. So you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the interest rate from Nssf for the last financial year, 17-18, of 15%. I'll let that sink in for a moment. 15%. Find me a bank which will pay you that much, and I will double it, because you won't. So another big hand clap for Nssf, who've done an amazing job. It's very interesting. We did take a poll earlier on the Nssf Twitter handle and Facebook, asking what you think the rate was going to be for this year. And as you can imagine, most of us are very optimistic. We have a lot of faith in Richard and the team. And the poll results suggested that, well, I think we'll have it on the screen, that most of us actually thought would be there or thereabouts. 47% of Ugandans expected a return of between 14 and 16%. There are some 15% who have absolutely no faith in us. Can we take away their interest and give it to the others? The parable in the Bible applies. Those who don't have, take and give to those who have. So those who had more faith should get the rest right. But an amazing job, so we are definitely going to be doing much better in the coming year. Now, do send your questions in. We'll be doing a Q&A session very briefly, where we'll get to answer some of the questions that you have about the fund, where it's going, and what's going to be happening. And that's coming up in just a little bit. And you can join us on Twitter for that discussion. Hashtag NSSFAMM18. That is hashtag NSSFAMM18 for any questions that you might have. The other very important thing to note, ladies and gentlemen, and to our viewers across the country, is this: that when you do get this money, you should be able to do something with it. And I remember a story that Richard once told of how people get this money and run mad because they are getting maybe hundreds of millions of shillings, and within 3-4 years they are broke. Which is why the Nssf came up with a brilliant idea called Friends with Benefits. And what Friends with Benefits does is that it highlights the stories of people who have received their money and done amazing things with them, not only for themselves, but for the greater good of their families and community at large. We finished season 2 of Friends with Benefits, and we had an amazing story. And right now, we're going to show you the story of the person who was the winner of Friends with Benefits season 2.
I'm a teacher by profession. I taught for about 7 years. I left in 91 and joined TASO. I worked with the TASO until 2013 when I voluntarily retired. Right from childhood, I have personally loved farming. So my retirement was focused into that. Hello, you're welcome to Busare, my village. My name is Nkaiv Hannington. I received my age benefit, and this is my Nssf story. The process of getting my benefits from Nssf, I found it very, very transparent and easy. I think I received my money in around 9 to 10 days, and that was very efficient. When I got my benefit, I had already planned where I wanted to invest it, and basically I wanted to invest in agriculture. The first thing I did with the money was to buy a pickup, and then I bought 2 tractors, first to plow for my farm, but also for hire to make money. I wanted one, but because there were 2, I was encouraged to buy all of them. Then I said my target has changed because I started looking for the market, a bigger market. We applied for the tobacco growers in Kiliandongo and around Masindi. In a day, a tractor can plow actually up to 6 acres. And per acre, we plow for 120,000 shillings. You can get on a daily basis like 300,000 if land was available and work was available per day. Last season, the demand was so overwhelming that I collected the little monies and had to buy a third one. The yield has brought other benefits. I bought bulls with the purpose of fattening them, and my plan is that by the end of next year I should be selling them and buy a good breed that provides enough milk, maybe 20 liters. The bulls also are very important for me because I also grow bananas. So they provide the natural fertilizer. As a result of the benefits that I'm now getting from where I invested my money, I've got people who are ladies who want their children to gain good education. So they come to me, okay, we shall be working in your gardens, take our children where they can get better education. The payment of school fees is to supply potato to the schools where they go, and the children continue to study. Part of the benefits of the tractor investment have helped me to renovate this house. So shelter has really improved because there is everything in there. Had I not saved my Nssf, I think my life wouldn't be as happy as it is. Personally, it has taken me miles. People that plan to get this money from Nssf, before you get this money, have a plan for it. It's better the Nssf money is put into a project that has been running, so you're just boosting.
Wow, what an inspirational story. And 2 key points to take away from that, ladies and gentlemen. Number 1 is don't wait for the money to come. Have a plan for it even now as you prepare. Many of us are still, a decade or so away from getting our money, but it doesn't stop you from planning what to do with it. The other key thing, of course, is the fact that, as mentioned earlier, that money is not just about you. It's about what you do for yourself, for your family, and for the community at large. And that's very important. We can't wait for Friends with Benefits Season 3, and may your stories be some of those. It's now at that time when we get to listen to you and hear your thoughts and questions on what the fund is doing and what it needs to do. And we're going to go into a very engaging panel discussion. And I'm going to invite some very special people to join me on the podium now as they come and deliberate with us. And we'll give them as much time as we need to try and hear from one another and learn what we need to do. I'll start by inviting the Chief Investment Officer at the Nssf, Gerald Paul Casato. Let's give him a big hand clap as they come. These are the guys responsible for us getting 15% this year, so they've done an amazing job. He's quickly followed by the Chief Business Officer at the Nssf, Geoffrey Sajabi. They'll be joined by our CFO at Nssf, none other than Stephen Mwanje, who is coming. And of course, the person who is responsible for huddling them together and giving them vision and direction, our MD, Richard Biarugawa. To conduct this session and lead the deliberations, I'll invite a friend of mine. I've worked with him for, I think, almost 19 years now. 2000 years, almost 19 years now. He's a general manager for editorial at the Nation Media Group. You probably read his columns every week in the Daily Monitor. Please welcome with me the amazing Daniel Kalinachi as he leads this session.
Thank you, Ben. You didn't tell them that I fired you, did you? I'm kidding. It's a good morning. I think excellent results. Let's start off with a round of applause for these guys again. Yeah? I think 15%, in this industry isn't, for a fairly conservative pension scheme is quite something. I was speaking to Richard the other day, and true to his form, he never gives anything away. He basically said it will be a good number, yeah. And I think 15% was quite something. Richard, I will start with you only because you're the boss. But I really want to speak to the guys who actually do all the work while you walk around managing by meetings. And this is how we're going to do it. First of all, there's a bit of numbers. And as a journalist, I was very outstanding in maths class, which meant I spent most of my time standing outside maths class. But I will have some questions to the panel, and then I will invite you with your pressing questions. I think some have been sent in on Twitter, and if you have others, please send them. We have up to 12:30, so we have exactly an hour. I will try to make my session fast and furious, and I'll hope that we get quick responses from the panel. Richard, let me just start with you. I mean, I've been a journalist in this town for a long time, and I see what has happened with the fund over the last kind of 7-8 years. And there is growth, assets under management, there's growth in revenue, there's growth in interest paid out to members. Then you compare that with the 20 years or so before that, where the fund was pretty much paying the statutory minimum. What do you think has changed? What is the thing that has changed to get the point that you have a full room of people here today?
Richard Biarugawa. No.
That's so immodest, Richard.
No, but no, seriously. I honestly believe that you've got to remember the history of the Nssf. Nssf was created in the 80s. It was created at a time when the economy was dominated by parastatals. In fact, the main reason that government started the Nssf, apart from catering for the private sector, was that the government has decided that they will run the economy based on huge parastatals and let the private sector run just a little bit of the economy. That was, as you recall, during Obote's time, I think Obote 2. And they were worried that all these people joining the parastatals would also want to get onto the government pension scheme. And therefore, there wouldn't be sufficient money to pay them for their pension. So the Nssf was then started to cater for a little bit of the private sector that was existing then, and a little bit, and all these parastatals that were coming up. But of course, you know that when the current government came into place, the whole strategy of government changed, and they downsized on government at the time, or downsized on the parastatals, and gave everything to the private sector, which then meant that all the people who were now working with the private sector, with the parastatals, decided to begin working for the private sector companies. And obviously their salaries have grown. We are paying out 360 billion shillings, as mentioned today, last year. And a lot of that growth is coming from, I would say, this financial services, coming from the areas of, what do you call it, the health, mining, and industry, and that sort of thing. But that shows you that there has been an increase in the number of population who are working for the private sector. I think I'd like to share these numbers. The chairman mentioned that there are 15 million Ugandans who currently work, and of those, 11 million of those are in the informal sector, but it's only about 4 million who are actually working, and of those, 500,000 are working for government. So you can see that the private sector has a big role to play. And therefore, the increment in collections is largely because the private sector now is paying attention to the pension. And obviously, it helps that as an institution, we have improved our efficiencies, we've become more visible, we've cut out the problems of the past, we've talked about the future, we've given the good returns previously, and are continuing to give the good returns. So we've basically become dominant, and the fact that the fund has also become big, we have big implications for the financial sector. We have big implications for the economy itself. If you look at government borrowing, we currently contribute almost 40% of all government borrowing. So if we didn't exist, government wouldn't be able to have money to finance the shortfalls on their budgets. If we were not involved in investments, people like Equity Bank wouldn't be existing because we're a big shareholder. KCB wouldn't be existing. So we've had an impact, and that impact basically means that we are doing a lot more for the economy, we are doing a lot more for our members, and we are doing a lot more for the country.
Yeah. Geoffrey, one of the things that struck me looking at the numbers is that you've now 10,000 people who are voluntarily contributing to the Nssf, and that represents $1.86 million in what they've brought in. Now, there are two ways of looking at that number. One way is to see it as $186, per person, which, over a year is not a lot of money. The other way is to see that if you go from 10,000 to 1 million people, you have $186 million of new money. Is this voluntary scheme, the new growth area, is this a flight to safety, because of the numbers that you're posting? And do you have a target where you want that figure to be in the next 3 or 5 years?
Thank you. I think the future is actually in the voluntary side of the business. I'll tell you that last financial year alone, voluntary grew by 130%. in terms of the value. And I would attribute that largely, number one, to the fact that members of the public are realizing the need to undertake long-term saving. Number two, that the fund is also doing some good work, because people would not be willing to voluntarily bring their money if the fund wasn't doing quite some work. And the categories that we're looking at are basically two. One, people that were initially members of the fund and are now employed, they are now able to voluntarily save. 2, we're looking at companies that employ less than 5 people. Today, they are also now able to voluntarily pay into the fund. I think the key thing to note is that legally, even if they didn't pay, we cannot enforce, but have chosen to voluntarily pay. In terms of actual money, it is not yet big. I mean, we're looking at about 5.6 billion in a year. That doesn't compare well with the rest of the sectors. But in terms of the growth, it is the fastest. So we think that the future, especially when the amendments to the Act are done, will be in the voluntary side. Looking at the numbers, the actual place in voluntary where we will get a lot of value is when the law enables the members here to save over and above the 5% that they save now. Yeah. Today we get so many people who actually walk into the offices and they are willing to save over and above 5, and we tell them the law does not allow you. Now, as soon as the Act is amended, and members of the public and the members of the fund can be allowed to save over and above 5, we think that the actual money that we shall collect in terms of value will come from the voluntary side.
So you're actually leaving money on the table at the moment?
Sure.
Gerald, if you look at the numbers, and you have a good year, obviously, but a lot of that income, 360 billion, came from the movement in the currencies. A lot of it, contributed to that. Now, that is not something you replicate, endlessly. Are we just riding the top of a crest? Should we just take our money this year and be happy we got 15%? Or do we see underlying value in the asset classes?
Thank you. I think before I answer the question, let me just give a bit of context. When you look at the end of the year, as of the 30th of June, this was the asset allocation. We had 75% in fixed income, actually 75.33%. That was down a year before from 77%. Then we had 18.09 in equities, and then we had 6.57 in real estate. But I think I need to dwell more on the equity story, because any investor knows that equities tends to be the highest return generating asset class, although it also tends to be risky, right? So what we've been able to do is to diversify the portfolio. And this story is important because in 2011, the allocation was 81% fixed income. It was then 13% real estate, and only 7% in equities, right? So fast forward, we've managed to move it to 18%. And when you look at our strategic asset allocation, we think that we should be at a minimum of 17.5 with an optimum of about 25% in equities. But now to answer specifically your question, when you look at the overall performance, the return was about 18.9%, overall portfolio return. Out of that, fixed income generated 16.05%, equities generated 33%, and real estate generated 12.37%, right? Now, why do we think that we need to be in the region? Because that answers specifically to your question. When you look at the split of the portfolio today, 40%, like Richard said, is in the region, and 60% is in Uganda. But you have to understand the nature of our markets. When you look at the Uganda Securities Exchange today, the market capitalization of the local securities, actually there are only 8 companies that are listed, and the market capitalization of those companies is $1.29 billion, right? If you want to compare with other East African countries, Kenya has 66 companies listed on the stock exchange with a market capitalization of $25 billion, right? So inadvertently, if you're going to diversify this portfolio, you cannot ignore Kenya. And again, if you want to look at maybe the economies of East Africa are like this. Kenya, $75 billion. Tanzania $52 billion, Uganda 27, and Rwanda about $9 billion. So we think that by being in the region, right, we are creating value for the member. If you look at the split going by that 40% in the region, 31% is in Kenya, 8% is in Tanzania, and only 1% is in Rwanda. Now we believe that where we stand, we are quite resilient. Now to answer specifically to the question of the currency, we believe that on average, the Uganda shilling will struggle against the regional currencies. If you've been looking at the exchange rate between the Kenya shilling and the Uganda shilling, I mean, in 2012 it was about 27. Today it's 38. Yeah? That is because when you look at the nature of our economy, we seem to be more open than our neighbors, and we are more vulnerable compared as an economy compared to our neighbors. What it means for the member, okay, what it means what it means for our strategy is that we think that by having a significant chunk in the region, we are taking advantage of the region, advantages of the opportunities in the region, and by doing so, we are creating value to the member. That explains why the performance was good.
So you're holding a long-term shot on the Ugandan shilling?
Not necessarily, because if you're looking at over the last 3 years, the total amounts invested by this ongoing board has been 5 trillion. Out of that, 50% has been in Uganda. It just so happens that there are not enough opportunities in Uganda, given the growth at which the fund is growing.
But Daniel, I would also like to add that don't forget that we've got to look at the reality. And the reality of the situation is that we, as a country, import more from everybody else. And I don't think that situation is going to change. So by having our investments in these other countries, basically there will always be an upside on the currency side. It's a fact of reality.
Are we looking beyond, once you get the amendments, are you looking to destinations?
That's definitely on the cards. It would require a significant change in the law relating to the regulator, because the regulator is the one who sets the targets. So we are quite confident that if we were given that opportunity, there is a lot of opportunity out there, especially on the stock exchanges, because that's where we are low in terms of our allocation. So 18% versus a strategic asset target of 25%. So there is a lot of opportunity in there, and as Gerald said, there is very little scope in Uganda. I mean, we last had a stock listed here in 2012. We've only got one more, 2012, Umeme. So we've just had Cipla coming on board. So you can imagine how long it takes for us to find any new opportunity to deal with in Uganda on the stock exchange. So we've got to look at other markets and look at other companies that are very well run, and perhaps take the alpha that comes to the portfolio.
Stephen, two numbers that jumped out of the audit report. The first is this contingent liability with URA, but that's probably a technical issue. The one that probably people will be more interested in is this 40 billion that isn't allocated to members. Is that inefficiency on your part in terms of you receiving money and you don't know where to put it? Is that inefficiency from the employers sending you money without details? And what can an ordinary member do to just make sure that they're getting their cash?
Okay, thank you very much. Starting with the contingent liability, it's about 42 billion, which is arising out of, I don't want to call it a dispute, but a disagreement with how to apply the tax law with URA. We have a strong conviction that we are on a higher ground, because we even have documentation from URA that had given us guidance on how to treat that matter. But subsequently, there was a change of heart. I must mention that before it was around 84 billion. We sat down on the table and agreed that the 42 billion should be dispensed with, and we have agreed to disagree about the 42 billion. Right now, the matter is before the commercial court. We recently managed to get a judge to hear it. And we are very hopeful, very optimistic that we are going to put that matter to bed. Now, the second issue about unallocated contributions. Let me first again put it in context. Most people, when they hear unallocated contribution, they think is that we are not taking care of that members. That unallocated contribution, we also put it in the pool of the money that we attribute interest to. But how does it come about? How it comes about basically two ways. Number one is that when we get, for example, whistleblower and tells me company X has not been complying, we go, our compliance team goes to audit. Now when they audit, they normally audit 7 years backwards. And they will go through all the records and they will come up with all those people you either under-declared for or you didn't pay for. Now, what happens is that most private companies have very high turnover. So if you come up that you paid for, say, Stevens 7 years ago, the employer will not likely have, remember, had not registered me, so, and they don't know how I went afterwards, where I am. But we're still duty-bound to collect that money and bring it. And what we do on a yearly basis, at least twice a year, through the media, is to advertise that money. Say we have money that we got from company X, B, C, please come for it. Then the second way it normally accumulated is normally industries that employ so many what you call target workers. Normally it's farming, commercial farming, and big-time manufacturers. We have had scenarios where they just go, for example, park a lorry at the border, and people board, and they come to work. Now, those people who are coming, say, from Southern Sudan or Congo, whatever, they have a target. Probably they come to work for 3 months just to get money, probably to get married. So the employers before had never taken time to really get the full details of this person. So they'll just give us a single name. And before we have gotten around to be able to register them, they've already gone back. But we still have those monies. So, but this is now a historical problem. Because if you have been following what we do through e-collections, we no longer have that problem. So now we are clawing backwards to make sure that we get these people. But time has come now when we almost certainly are not going to be able to get most of these people, because every year we advertise, we spend hundreds of millions of shillings to advertise and get these people on board, and every year we're getting less and less people. So very soon we are going to have to take an administrative decision. Right now, we have done, and we have taken all the steps to make sure that genuine people we can collect, we can easily get out of that number. We have put them on the books and we have registered them.
Daniel, just to put it into perspective, the figure that Stevens is referring to is about 24 billion. That's what is core. So the difference between the 40 billion that the accounts say and the 24 is the variable. That's the one that where we think there will be movement. But the 24 is the core, where we believe that, given the time it has taken, given the movement that we've seen once we have advertised, that amount we might have to pack it into a reserve account. Fortunately, the minister has the powers to authorize us to pack that money into our reserve account. However, that money will still be available should the member turn up. And secondly, the member would never lose out on his interest. So, for example, today we've declared the rate of 15%. That money will also be paid to the reserve account, so that should a member ever appear in the future, then they would get both the money that they paid in or their employers paid in, and also the money that we've been saving for them in interest.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Just one more addition. I also want to point out that this figure in 2010 was actually 104 billion.
Yes.
Which we have progressed. So it shows you that over 80 billion of that actually.
That's why we gave you a big pay rise. That's why we gave you a big pay rise recently. I want to come to you with questions, and I'm going to ask you to, when you get the microphone, we have microphones going around, to please, first and foremost, don't make disguised speeches. please tell us your name and what you do, and then direct your question to someone. But before I do that, Richard, one of the things that you've said this to me privately in the past, is this mismatch between asset classes that give long-term value, which is what pension funds are looking for, and the fact that a lot of what you have on the market are short-term, I think the longest is 10 years or something like that. Yet you look around and you see infrastructure assets. Southern Bypass is going to be a toll road, is going to bring income for 30, 40, 50 years. You have power dams that are being built. People are going to make money, 19% on the dollar for 30 years. Why aren't we pushing faster to change the law to get Nssf involved in these long-term A-grade asset classes?
Okay, first of all, the longest asset class that we have available for us to invest is a 15-year Treasury bill bond, which, as you know, is issued about 4 times a year. The other asset classes that we might have that are long-term is what you are referring to, would be, construction of road, of bridges and dams and, the highways. The biggest challenge for us has been that government, for whatever reason, has not been able to put up special purpose vehicles to run these businesses. I believe that part of the reason government passed the PPP law, I think it's a private-public partnership law, was to allow both the private sector and the public sector to be able to come together and create a vehicle. For example, I think the one that is almost happening is the Jinja-Kampala highway. The plan is that they will get some private people and the government to come together and create a special purpose vehicle or read a company. That company will then own that highway and then receive its returns through a toll. Therefore, it would take us maybe 20 years, maybe 30 years to pay back the money. But everybody who participates in that structure would then be paid back through either equity or even debt, because there could be a debt structure and also an equity structure, which means that you change the way you finance it. So, unfortunately for us as a country, I think we've not been very, very smart in doing those. If you go to Tanzania, there are a couple of deals they've done, even involving the pension funds. If you go to Kenya, a lot of the new highways, they've done those structures. And I think that eventually, with Uganda, we'll be able to get a structure such as the one that I've described, and hopefully we'll be able to invest money. Just for your own sake, the reason we want a long-term investment is because 75% of our members are below the age of 30, or it might be even 35. Now, if somebody is 35, that means that they will only qualify to get their money when they are 55. So they've got 20 years to be with the fund. So in those 20 years, they will not need to receive their money. So we can invest that money and get a good return. That's why it's important that as the liabilities are long time, we need to find some long-term assets to be able to match that principle. And we're hoping that our government can basically come up with some of those structures which we can invest in.
I think now I see why the minister disappeared. Okay. We will take 4 questions at a time. We only have about 35 minutes. I want it to be as brisk and interactive as possible. The gentleman in the front is number 1. The lady in the middle is number 2. The gentleman in the front who looks like he has a lot of money in the fund is number 3. And do we have another lady? Ladies? The lady at the end, number 4.
Thank you, moderator. Thank you, managing director, and thank you, chairman and the board. When 15% was announced, everybody rose up, and we say wow, and we say thank you to God.
Please tell us your name, sir.
My name is John Oprong. I am the General Secretary of Uganda Media Union, and a union affiliated to NOTU, National Organization of Trade Unions. 15% was announced, everybody got up. But I did not see in the budget 10% ties for God. But that is not the question. The question is...
Thank goodness.
The question is, I've seen in your report, MD, you say 20% is given to UBRA. And then I've also seen the report of the chairman say 145, I don't know whether it was from you, 145 billion is paid to tax to, that is to Revenue Authority. I've seen this, the minister wanted minister to explain to me or to people who believe like me, why is it that Oprah is getting money from you and NEMA is not getting money from water? Why?
Thank you very much. Good question.
Just allow it. Please let me do.
One question.
The tax, I'm just asking. The tax, we are paying tax twice. We are paying 20% tax to Oprah. We are paying 140 billion to revenue. Is it not two tax we are paying?
Thank you. Thank you, John.
I'd like to advise to our members in the plenary here that for purposes of time, we are going to insist that you think hard about your question, frame it in 2 sentences, simply stand up, introduce yourself, and tell us your question in 15 seconds. If not, we will be forced to pull the mic from your hands, live on TV. We don't want to do that. So please keep your questions straight forward, 15 seconds. Over to you, Dan.
Thank you, Ben. Yes, ma'am. Microphone, please. She's number 2, he's number 3, she's number 4. See, I know mathematics.
Thank you very much. My name is Evelyn Nakato. I come from financial sector deepening Uganda. We're a non-profit organization funded by UKAID or DFID. My question is, we really appreciate what Nssf is doing. We've seen people invest their money. But yes, is it about only saving? What I would advise maybe is maybe you could advise your beneficiaries or people who are yet to receive their money on how to invest it. Do you have that department that maybe you can call me up, Evelyn, your money is due, but we have this department you could visit so that we help you invest your money, because not all of us have those brilliant ideas on how to invest.
That's a very good question.
This department?
Thank you very much. That's a very good question. To the gentleman.
Thank you so much. My name is John Mary Odoi, and very soon I'll be senior citizen. I'll start earning the 25,000 shillings he's given. And I would like to say that I'm also chairman of Transparency International, Uganda, and I'm very happy with the chairman presented, but also to say that MD and chairman, I'll be visiting you to share with you more of these issues of transparency at international level. But my question is that you spoke about voluntary savings, and for me, I think that's a very, very good product. But I think not many of us are aware of that. Could we please increase the mechanism, the efforts of letting most of us Ugandans get to know that? Secondly, and finally, is that I'm interested in knowing, because you mentioned that I think you invest 40% of the fund to outside Uganda. I wanted to know how much of that comes in, and if it's more than what we invest in Uganda, the 60%, could we put more money outside there? And then
thank you, Mr. John Mary. We'll take those two, but there's next year. The lady at the end.
Thank you very much. My name is Lucy Anyango Ekadu. I am the chairperson, Uganda Journalists Union, affiliated to NOTU. I'm not very good with figures, but 2 million out of 40 million Ugandans. What plan does Nssf have to up that figure? And I have another issue with employer-employee in terms of checkoff of Nssf. In my industry, we've had experience where your salary, the Nssf bit is checked off, but that's where it ends. It doesn't reflect in Nssf, as in the employer does not follow through to make sure that what is checked off from your salary is actually reflecting in Nssf.
Their research report entitled Gender Roles and the Care Economy in Ugandan Households, the case of Kabong, Kabale and Kampala districts on Tuesday 28th August 2018 at the Golf Course Hotel. This event will be live on NTV from 2:30 p.m. supported by Oxfam, Economic Policy Research Center, School of Women and Gender Studies, Makerere University.
With DFCU Quick Connect, you can now track your account activity, make bulk payments including salary, utility, and statutory payments, and spend more time running your business. Visit internet.dfcugroup.com to access your corporate account on your laptop or desktop computer at any time, wherever you are. Switch to DFCU Quick Banking and experience how we're making more possible for you.
DFCU, with pleasure. Their research report entitled Gender Roles and the Care Economy in Ugandan Households, the case of Kabong, Kabale and Kampala districts on Tuesday 28th August 2018 at the Golf Course Hotel. This event will be live on NTV from 2:30 p.m. supported by Oxfam, Economic Policy Research Center, School of Women and Gender Studies, Makerere University.
When your passion depends on it.
Who are yet to lose and third in the group. Keeper chose not to hold on. We're closing down right from the front. Now, byline.
And your life too. And then just avoid the uncertainty by powering your life with our extensive range of high-quality solar systems. Power your business, home and farming with our excellent solutions at a flexible credit and excellent customer service. Solar now, powering your life.
Are you in need of being refreshed, beautified and renewed? Come to Sparkle Salon and be pampered by our team of experienced staff that will leave you feeling rejuvenated. At all Sparkle Salons, we offer professional barber, hairdressing, nails, beauty and wedding services to a cosmopolitan clientele in a comfortable environment using proven products at affordable prices. Just walk into our outlets and you'll be instantly attended to. Our salons are located in major shopping malls with safe, ample parking space for your comfort. At Lugogo Mall, Garden City, Forest Mall, Oasis Mall, and Acacia Mall. Sparkle Saloon. Professional, affordable, and quality services.
I'm just right inside the court-martial in Machinde. Relentlessly, the relatives and friends of General Kale Kahira, the former inspector of police, are waiting for the verdict, especially coming from the hearing of his bail application. Today morning, the first session they submitted from his counsel, that is the Kampala associate lawyers, they submitted asking for bail for General Kahira, saying that he's a man of high